I know I'm not wearing a hat. I got a hat right here, but I wanted to prove to some people that I do have hair. I'm not bald, okay? I'm not Joe Thorne. I got hair, and just most of the time I wear a hat because I like wearing hats. Anyways, today we're talking about some fundamentalists who are fighting. Go figure. Fundamentalists fighting, arguing about stuff. What a shocker. But we're not talking about like the fundies that are, somewhere probably in a corner arguing about whether Jesus drank juice or wine and getting into it. We're talking about the new fundies who are arguing about something about as important. I'll be honest. It's about as important, and that is Christian nationalism. Now, I'll tell you why I think it's not that important in a little bit. I could already see, some people are typing away, getting ready. But I want to give some props. It's going to shock you. I want to give some props to the G3 Ministries guys. So Josh Buice and Scott Aniol, they decided this week, this was going to be the week when they went at Christian nationalism. And so they wrote a couple articles, and I got to admit, I'm pretty harsh on these guys overall because I have a lot of disagreements with them. But these articles were pretty good. And really what happened was you saw the G3 Ministries guys being Baptists, believing in a separation of church and state, believing that everyone has the will to choose whether they're going to obey God or not, and have that freedom, that religious freedom, to decide that for themselves rather than having the government force that upon them or push them into a certain religious stream just because that's what everyone in this nation does. Baptists, our beliefs go deep about this. This is not some little thing for Baptists. Baptists firmly believe that you have the freedom to decide whether you're going to participate in any religion and what religion that should be. That's who we are as Baptists. Also, that baptism actually means something. So when we talk about the Great Commission and baptizing the nations, we're not talking about like some vague form of baptism, meaning that the nations are baptized. No, we're talking about individuals who believe in Jesus and they have a creed, a profession of faith, and they trust in Jesus and they're following Jesus through obedience in communion and then with baptism. So it's just interesting to see these guys kind of get some flack for this because it's, this thing's going on, this splitting of evangelicalism where we have like these different groups, this new fundamentalism, which I've talked a bunch about here on my channel. And it's just interesting that this thing, Christian nationalism, is the thing that's going to fracture at least some aspect of relationship between G3 Ministries and Moscow, Doug Wilson's whole thing. And it's interesting. One of the things that Josh concludes with in one of his articles, he put, as the gospel preached results in changed lives, such changed lives will result in changed homes. As families are ordered according to the gospel, it will lead to a positive change within the civil sphere, which showers blessings upon a society. However, this common good is not the ultimate aim. The end goal is not Christian nationalism or Christendom, which is Doug Wilson's whole thing. They're switching from Christian nationalism to Christendom, and Joe Rigney's talked about this. That's why he's not at Bethlehem anymore. Bethlehem also decided that they would be firmly against this idea of Christian nationalism and that they're going to remain Baptists, essentially. And G3 Ministries is now following in suit. Ultimately, the church perseveres in the faith by preaching the gospel of King Jesus and longing for a better city, just as Abraham did. One whose designer and builder is God. That's super important. When Christ returns, he will make all things new. The dwelling place of God will be with man. He will wipe away every tear from our eyes, and there will be no more pain, disease, or death, for those former things will have passed away. This is not a Protestant project. So in other words, it's not something that we're doing. It's not a project that we're all working on. We're all chipping in, and eventually this will come about. We're not ushering in the kingdom. in that way. That is not Christian nationalism, he writes. Because again, this isn't something that we can do through policies or strategies, earthly means. God, he says, that the designer and builder is God. And he's right. God is the only one who can bring about that kind of utopian version of society. He's the only one who can. And he's not doing it through the church in that way. We preach the gospel. And yes, it has an effect, but not like what Doug Wilson and the people who are promoting Christian nationalism or Christendom, whatever. I you know what? I refuse. I just decided I'm gonna say it a little stronger. You can't just take Christendom and be like, oh, it means what I want it to mean. You know, when we talk about Christendom, we're talking about Christianity, the people who are Christians. And I think it's a pretty arrogant thing to just be like, no, that means what I want it to mean now. And we're really just trying to Christianize the world through like a visual way of seeing policies and governments raised that are Christian governments and blah, 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 and all the Christian nationalism stuff. So stop talking about it as Christendom. It's not Christendom. That's Christian nationalism. Anyways, simply put, this is Christianity. And he's right. Josh Buice is right. Also, I wanted to kind of point out something too. This is something that I've seen quite a bit from the Moscow people because they don't like me, of course. And sometimes I get this kind of stuff from the G3 Ministries guys, but I just found it interesting that he decided to tweet, because he doesn't have a penalty box like I do on Underdog Theology, which is my Monday show. You should be subscribed so you know when we're going to be streaming that on Monday evenings. But he decided to tweet this: if you oppose Christian nationalism, expect the following. So these are some of the comments that he gets about it. 1, you didn't read my book, which is funny because my book. So he's talking about Stephen Wolfe. But you have loser theology, and he put that in quotes. So I'm assuming that's something that he has been told. You're just a pietist. You're afraid to address the public square. You're one of those just preach the gospel guys. You're aligning with Russell Moore. So he really wants it clear that he's, even still, he's not with Russell Moore, just in case any of us were thinking that. Also, when was the last time like Russell Moore was like in the spotlight? It's just funny that those guys always want to bring it back to him. PSA, none of those things are accurate about me or G3. Happy to discuss this issue. We must. To which I say, must we? Like, all right, here's why I say Christian nationalism isn't important. And it's not. Because the world will not embrace Christian nationalism. And the only people who are talking about Christian nationalism are Christians. Or, you know, MSNBC or whoever, maybe it was NBC, it was Meet the Press. They did their whole like little documentary, 30-minute segment about Moscow and Christian nationalism. But those are people just trying to get viewers. Anyone in real life? Nope. It's not. It's just Christians. Because here's the thing. Christianity in North America is declining. It's not growing. And that's sad, and we need to do something about that. But to say, oh, now we're going to be even more powerful, and we're going to be able to have, you know, our say in the whole government. This is ivory tower conversations where we're just kind of debating hypotheticals, and it won't actually have any impact in the world. And I'll say this to those who are saying like Christian nationalism, it's been tried before. Not the way that people talk about this form of Christian nationalism today. That's not what Constantine did. That's not, you know, what was happening in the medieval era. That's not it. It's not it at all, actually. So to those people, it hasn't been tried in the way that people want it to be tried today. And even if it had, like if those were the cases, it didn't work. And Josh Buice and Scott Aniol, they point that out very well in their articles. Again, just so weird to be talking about them and being like, oh, they did a good job. Well, they did. They did a good job. And, you know, I don't want to be too sarcastic and too mean about it. But they did a good job. And so I want to give them props. But let's be clear. The only people who are debating Christian nationalism are Christians, and they have no understanding about how little influence they really have. Um, there's the wackadoos who are doing all kinds of things and having rallies and saying things, um, but that's not the average person. And it's just kind of funny to see people who are so out of touch with how unbelievers think and talk, and for them to be like, yeah, we totally understand. We got our finger on the pulse, and maybe we could even have, a Christian nationalist party. It's not going to happen, or at least it's not going to happen in any significant way where they're going to have actual impact. So this is just like a theological hobby horse, and it's a hypothetical that I guess is causing some division among the fundamentalists. And to that, I'm kind of thankful for it. If this is a thing that makes it so that, G3 thinks twice before, having conferences where they have some of these Moscow camp people, cross-politic, Christchurch folks into their sphere and have them at their conferences, I'm thankful for it. It's too bad that it couldn't have been like any of the abuse or the talk about gender and roles within the home and, some of these really significant things that actually do have an impact. But, if it's a hypothetical theological hobby horse that causes that, okay, I'll take it. Oh, yeah? Well, get your own YouTube then. Oh, hey, you made it all the way through the video. That's actually kind of shocking. Hey, if you did, that means that you probably like it, so might as well hit the like button, right? Also, you can go over here and click on a video. I don't know what it is, but YouTube will be like, hey, you should watch this, and maybe they know. Maybe the algorithm is right. Maybe AI knows everything. Maybe it's taking over the world. I think it's taking over the world.